In 1959, Billy Graham released Gotta Travel On, a massive hit that made him an overnight international star and a member of the Grand Ole Opry, but it was also his last major solo hit. His chart career quickly faded, creating one of Nashville's greatest and most fascinating paradoxes. This is the story of a man who sang about moving on, but ironically chose to stay. A pioneer who became a quiet mainstay, a rising star who quietly shone in the same place for 50 years. To understand the man behind the cheerful, optimistic hit, you have to travel back to a place defined by grit, by hard work, by deep faith, and by the ever-present shadow of the earth itself. Billy Graham was born in 1925 in Benton, Illinois. This wasn't the romanticized, rolling farmland of the pastoral ideal. This was coal country, a world where life was measured in shifts and tons, where a town's fortunes rose and fell with the price of coal, and where a father's love was often expressed through the calloused, permanently blackened hands that put food on the table for his family. Billy was the eldest of 13 children, born into the heart of a generation that would be forged in the crucible of the Great Depression. His father, like most men in Benton, was a coal miner, a man who descended into darkness every day to provide for his sprawling family. This was a dangerous, unforgiving life. The community was tight-knit, bound by a shared struggle and a deep understanding of the risks that came with their livelihood. In this world, there were few luxuries. Life was about survival, about family, about community, and about finding joy in the simplest of things. And for many in Southern Illinois, that joy, that window to a wider world, came through the crackle of a radio. Long before Nashville became the undisputed center of the country music universe, one of the most powerful and influential radio shows in America was the WLS National Barn Dance, broadcast from nearby Chicago. For a young boy like Billy, whose future seemed pre-written in the coal seams beneath his feet, that signal was a lifeline. It was a magical portal to a world of singing cowboys like Gene Autry, heartfelt ballads, and dazzling guitar players. He would listen, mesmerized, dreaming of a life outside the mind. His father, a man who understood the hardship of his own life, saw the passionate spark in his son's eyes and encouraged it. He bought Billy his first guitar, a simple, inexpensive model from a Montgomery Ward mail-order catalog. It was an act of profound hope, a small investment in a dream that seemed a million miles away. Billy took to the instrument with a natural, almost obsessive talent. He was self-taught, his education coming from the radio and from the patient, painstaking process of training his own ear. He learned to play the songs he heard, mimicking the licks of the era's guitar heroes. The guitar became his escape, his voice, his ticket to a different destiny. It was a skill honed not in fancy music schools, but in the humble living room of his family home, the sound of his practicing providing a constant soundtrack of hope against the harsh realities of the Depression. This upbringing instilled in Billy a deep-seated humility, a powerful work ethic, and an unwavering appreciation for the simple, honest stories of everyday people, qualities that would define his entire life and career. He understood where he came from, and he never, ever forgot it. Like so many young men of his generation, Billy Graham's journey was interrupted by the call of duty. He enlisted in the United States Army during World War II and served his country, an experience that took him far from the familiar coal fields of Illinois and exposed him to a wider, more complex world. When he returned, the dream of a life in music was burning brighter and with more urgency than ever. But his road to Nashville, the city he would one day call home for half a century, would take a significant and often overlooked detour through the nation's capital. Instead of heading straight to Music City, Billy moved to the Washington, D.C. area. In the post-war boom of the early 1950s, D.C. had a surprisingly vibrant and influential country music scene, arguably second only to Nashville at the time. It was a major hub for radio and for the brand new, exciting, and technically demanding world of live television. The dominant figure in this scene was a powerful promoter and broadcaster named Connie B. Gay, a larger-than-life character often called the Frank Sinatra of country music promoters. Gay had built a media empire of radio shows, television programs, and live events, and he was always on the lookout for the absolute best musical talent to back his stars. Billy Grammer, with his already formidable and precise guitar skills, quickly became one of the most in-demand musicians in Gay's entire operation. This was Billy's professional apprenticeship, and it was a masterclass in the highest echelons of the business. He wasn't just a background player in a smoky bar, he was a key part of the house bands for Gay's popular television shows, which were broadcast live to thousands of viewers. This was a high-pressure, high-stakes environment with no room for error, a trial by fire that forged his legendary professionalism. During his time in D.C., Billy backed up a staggering array of future legends who were passing through the capital. He played behind Grandpa Jones, Hawkshaw Hawkins, and a fiery young singer with a once-in-a-generation voice named Patsy Cline. For years, he was the lead guitarist for a charismatic country singer and future breakfast sausage magnate Jimmy Dean on his popular local TV show. This period is a crucial, often forgotten chapter of Billy's story. Long before his own hit record, he was already a seasoned, top-tier professional, a guitarist, deeply respected by his peers for his precision, his versatility, and his unwavering reliability under the hot lights of the television studio. He was building a reputation not as a flashy star, but as a consummate craftsman. But the ultimate goal was always Nashville. In 1958, with a decade of high-level experience under his belt, he finally made the move, signing with Monument Records, a new, ambitious label founded by the legendary producer Fred Foster. Billy Grammer was ready for his shot. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source, a folk music album. The song was "Gotta Travel On." It wasn't a new composition, it was a folk standard, a piece of the rich, uncredited tapestry of American traditional music, with roots stretching back to Old English ballads. It had been collected by folklorists and recorded by artists like Pete Seeger and the Weavers, but it was a version copyrighted and recorded by folk singer Paul Clayton that caught Billy's ear. He heard something in its simple, rambling melody and its timeless story of wanderlust. He decided to record it, but he wasn't just going to cover it, he was going to reinvent it. Working in the studio with producer Fred Foster, Billy Grammer created an arrangement that was pure crossover genius. He kept the song's essential folk structure, but he injected it with a driving, almost rockabilly backbeat, anchored by his own distinctive, instantly catchy acoustic guitar riff. The result was a sound that was impossible to categorize, but incredibly, irresistibly infectious. It wasn't strictly country, it wasn't strictly folk, and it wasn't strictly rock and roll. It was a perfect fusion of all three. It was the perfect record at the perfect time. Released in late 1958, Gotta Travel On was a sensation. It exploded onto the charts, a slow burn that grew into a national wildfire. It climbed all the way to number 4 on the Billboard Pop Chart, number 5 on the Country Chart, and even hit number 14 on the R&B chart in early 1959. It was a massive international hit. Suddenly, the respected session guitarist from Benton, Illinois, was an overnight superstar. The success was so immediate and so immense that he was offered the highest honor in country music, membership in the Grand Ole Opry. On February 28, 1959, just weeks after his song had conquered the nation's airwaves, Billy Grammer stepped into the hallowed circle for the first time as an official member of the Opry family. It was a storybook beginning. The hit, the fame, the Opry induction. It seemed to be the start of a long and dominant career as a chart-topping superstar. And this is where the story of Billy Grammer takes its most fascinating and unexpected turn, diverging from the standard Nashville narrative. With a hit as monumental as Gotta Travel On and a permanent, prestigious home on the Grand Ole Opry, the industry playbook was clear: follow up with another hit, then another, and build a career as a headlining chart-topping star. Billy certainly tried. He released a string of excellent follow-up singles, well-crafted songs like his version of the historical instrumental Bonaparte's Retreat and the heartfelt I Wanna Go Home, which was a respectable top 20 country hit. They were good records, they made the charts, but none of them came close to recapturing the lightning in a bottle, culture-shifting magic of his debut. The rocket that had launched him into the pop stratosphere seemed to gracefully settle into a comfortable but much lower orbit within the country music world. It's one of the great puzzles of his career, and the answer is likely a complex mix of factors. Some argue that Gotta Travel On was simply too unique, too definitive to ever be followed. It was a perfect storm of a timeless song, a revolutionary arrangement, and a specific moment in cultural history that was impossible to replicate. Others have suggested that Billy, at his core, was more of a master musician and craftsman than a charismatic, larger-than-life frontman. His appeal was in his quiet dignity, his phenomenal talent, and his sincerity, not in a carefully cultivated, rebellious star persona that the changing tides of music were beginning to favor. But there is another, often overlooked part of the story that reveals where Billy Grammer's true passions and ambitions lay during this period. While his recording career as a solo artist was plateauing, he was pouring his considerable creative and business energy into a different venture, one that would cement his legacy not as a singer, but as an innovator, a craftsman, and a true champion of his beloved instrument. In the early 1960s, Billy partnered with a Nashville luthier named J.W. Gower and a businessman, Clyde Reed, to form the Grammer Guitar Company. This wasn't some simple vanity endorsement deal. Billy was the president of the company and was deeply personally involved in the design and production of these high-end acoustic instruments. His goal was ambitious: to create a guitar with the slim, fast, and easy playability of a high-end electric, but with the rich, powerful, and resonant tone of a classic Martin or Gibson acoustic. The Grammer guitar, with its signature slim neck profile, its unique scalloped bracing, and its powerful, balanced sound, was a masterpiece of modern guitar making. It quickly became one of the most prestigious and sought-after instruments in Nashville. The list of legendary artists who proudly played a Grammer guitar is a testament to their exceptional quality. Johnny Cash famously played a black Grammer. Merle Haggard, Loretta Lynn, Conway Twitty, and even the Rolling Stones' Mick Taylor all owned and played Grammers. The Grammer guitar became a symbol of the Nashville sound, a tool of the trade for the biggest stars in the business. This venture reframes Billy's story entirely. He wasn't a fading star struggling for another hit. He was a successful entrepreneur, a respected inventor, and a man who was contributing to the sound of country music in a different but equally profound and tangible way. He had found another powerful way to express his love for his craft. The business was a huge success until a devastating fire destroyed their factory in Nashville in 1967. It was a tragic setback, and while the company was eventually rebuilt and sold, it never fully regained its momentum. But for a time, Billy Graham wasn't just playing the hits, he was building the very instruments that made them. While the guitar business was a passion, and Gotta Travel On was his calling card, the true steady rhythm of Billy Graham's life for the next 50 years was the Grand Ole Opry. He wasn't a guest star, he was family. He saw himself as a steward of country music's most sacred institution, a keeper of the flame. Fellow Opry members, from the legends of his generation to the young up-and-comers, often spoke of his incredible professionalism and his quiet generosity. In the sometimes chaotic, always high-pressure world of live radio where timing is everything, Billy was the guy you could always count on. He was never late. He never missed a cue. He always delivered a flawless performance, whether he was singing his famous hit to a roaring crowd or playing a beautiful, intricate guitar instrumental that could bring a hush over the Ryman Auditorium. This unwavering reliability made him a favorite, not just of the fans, but of the Opry management as well. He became the Opry's unofficial minister of protocol, the go-to person to greet visiting dignitaries, politicians, and special guests backstage. He had a natural grace and a genuine warmth that made everyone, from presidents to foreign ambassadors, feel welcome. He was in many ways the heart and soul of the Opry's backstage community. His deep Christian faith was the undisputed bedrock of his life. It wasn't something he wore on his sleeve for show. It was a deeply held private conviction that guided his every action. This faith was the source of his famous and, at the time, highly countercultural stance against the drug and alcohol abuse that was rampant in the music industry. In the 1960s and 70s, as the outlaw movement began to glorify a hard-living, rebellious lifestyle, Billy Graham stood as a quiet, unwavering counterpoint. He once famously and politely refused to allow a very well-known and visibly intoxicated country superstar to come on his tour bus. It wasn't an act of self-righteousness or judgment. It was an act of principle. He simply wouldn't condone the self-destruction he saw happening around him. This courageous stance might have cost him some cool points in certain circles, but it earned him a deep, lasting respect from those who understood the strength it took to stand for something in a world of constant compromise. But perhaps the most emotionally striking and revealing story about Billy, one that most people have never heard, is his deep personal connection to the tragic story of the Collins children of Chicago. In 1969, he read a heartbreaking newspaper article about three young siblings, ages 10, 12, and 14, who had been recently orphaned and were fighting with social services to stay together against all odds. Deeply moved by their plight, Billy, a father of 13 himself, did something extraordinary. He flew to Chicago, met the children, and became their champion. He brought them to Nashville, and he and his wife, Ruth, became surrogate parental figures to them. He used his national platform on the Grand Ole Opry to raise money and awareness for their situation, ensuring they could stay together. This wasn't a publicity stunt. It was a genuine, life-altering act of compassion from a man with a huge heart. It reveals the true, unvarnished character of Billy Graham, a man who, despite his fame, never lost his connection to the struggles of ordinary people. He was a man of profound empathy, a quality that shone through in his music, his craftsmanship, and his life. The consequences and historical significance of Billy Graham's career are far greater and more nuanced than his short time on the pop charts might suggest. His legacy is multifaceted, touching on the evolution of popular music, the fine craft of instrument making, and the very soul and identity of the Grand Ole Opry. First and foremost, with Gotta Travel On, he was a crucial and often overlooked trailblazer of the country pop and folk pop crossover. His energetic, folk-infused recording was released in late 1958, predating the massive American folk revival of the early 1960s. Yet, it perfectly captured the energy and appeal of that burgeoning movement. The song's monumental success proved to a skeptical Nashville and a dismissive pop world that there was a huge untapped audience for this kind of authentic, story-driven music, a blend of rural honesty and modern rhythmic energy. He helped pave the highway that artists like Johnny Cash, Bob Dylan, and the Kingston Trio would soon travel down. He was one of the first to show that a song could belong to everyone, regardless of the genre labels the industry tried to impose. Secondly, his contribution as a luthier with Grammer guitars had a tangible, lasting impact on the sound of modern country music. The instruments he helped design were revered for their quality, their playability, and their distinctive, powerful tone. When you hear the powerful rhythmic boom chicka boom strum of Johnny Cash on his iconic black Grammer guitar during his legendary Folsom Prison concert, you are hearing the direct result of Billy Grammer's vision and craftsmanship. He wasn't just a player. He was an enabler of other great artists, providing them with the high-quality tools they needed to create their own legendary sounds. This part of his legacy is a testament to his deep, abiding love and understanding of the guitar, his chosen instrument. But perhaps his most enduring significance lies in what he represents for the Grand Ole Opry itself. In an industry defined by constant change, by the churn of rising stars and fading legends, Billy Grammer was a symbol of permanence, of dedication, of loyalty. His 50-year tenure is a powerful reminder that the Opry is more than just a weekly showcase for the current hitmakers. It is a family, a living, breathing tradition, held together by a bedrock of dedicated, immensely talented performers who show up week after week, year after year, to keep the music and the spirit alive. Billy Grammer embodied the professionalism, the dedication, and the humble, hard-working spirit that is the true soul of the Opry. He wasn't just a member. For 5 decades, he was a pillar. The final chapter in Billy Grammer's long life was a moving and heartbreaking conclusion to a story of quiet dignity and extraordinary strength. In his final years, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. The man with a razor-sharp memory and encyclopedic knowledge of thousands of songs, who greeted dignitaries and mentored young artists with a quick wit and warm personality, began to lose the very memories that had defined his extraordinary life. He spent his final years in the care of his family, far from the Nashville spotlight of which he had been an integral part. He finally passed away peacefully at a hospital in his hometown of Benton, Illinois, on August 10, 2011, at the age of 85. His passing brought a full circle. The man who sang about having to keep going, finally returning to where he started. Billy Grammer's death did not create the media firestorm that so often plagues contemporary stars, but rather a quiet wave of sadness and nostalgia that rippled through the country music community. At the Grand Ole Opry, his spiritual home for more than 50 years, his passing was deeply felt. For his fellow members, they had lost not just a colleague, but a pillar, a friend, and a symbol of professionalism and dedication. The night after his death, the Opry stage held solemn moments to honor him. Perhaps an empty chair was placed under the spotlight, or another artist performed a moving rendition of "Gotta Travel On," not with the verve of the original, but with a reverence for the man who immortalized it. Colleagues shared stories of his humility, kindness, and dependability backstage. For fans of his generation, the news of Billy Grammer's death brought back memories of a bygone era. Gotta Travel On was playing on classic country radio stations once again, and for many, It was like hearing the soundtrack to their youth. The great paradox of Billy Graham's life is that the man who sang Gotta Travel On is best remembered for staying put. He found his home at the Grand Ole Opry and devoted himself to it for half a century. He chose the path of a dedicated craftsman over a flashy star, leaving behind a legacy of finely crafted guitars and unwavering loyalty. Ultimately, he was living proof that true value lies not in how far you go, but in the good you build and leave behind.